Hello and welcome back to Busting the Backlog, the series where I use the promise of YouTube content in the futile attempt to put a dent in my ever-expanding backlog. Today we're going to look at a little game called Flamebreak. Now, I actually covered this game on my main channel 4 years ago, long before I started making the content I'm known for, and long before my videos stopped sucking. But one thing has remained the same. I really like this game, and I think it's a damn shame that it flew under everyone's radar. So let's take a look, shall we? Flamebreak is a twin-stick roguelite developed and self-published by Nimbly Games. Like most roguelites, the goal is simple. Make your way through the procedurally generated maps in order to reach the end and kill the big bad. The big bad in question is actually 5 big bads, those being the gods of this world, though you'll only fight one per run. Furere, god of rage, Sepicles, god of speed, Proctus, god of protection, Halarin, god of health, and Necrus, god of death. These 5 ganged up on and killed the benevolent creator god and have been wreaking havoc ever since. The player, quite simply, wants them gone. The lore is delivered to you via poetry, which I think is stylish as hell. This is one of the few instances of a roguelite where I actually care about the story. There is a video of the intro poem on YouTube and I'll link it below. I do recommend watching it because it's neat. The gameplay loop is pretty simple. You start out by picking one of 3 randomized characters. The randomized elements are firstly the character's race. There's human, elf, dwarf, orc, and more besides. Each race has certain stat multipliers. So for example, giants have increased attack damage and reduced skill power, whereas fairies have the inverse. Each race also has a unique racial ability. Humans can summon little minions that'll fight on your behalf until they die. Elves can summon roots that'll temporarily bind enemies. The next randomized factor is the weapon. There are 8 different weapons on offer, all of which will fundamentally change the way you play the game. There's the sword, which is pretty much the milquetoast melee weapon, good at dealing close-up damage to groups of enemies. There's the dagger, which has reduced damage and range, but gains a solid multiplier when backstabbing enemies. There's the musket, which deals spread damage at medium range with slow attack speed with a built-in chance to stun. And each character also gets 2 random skills on top of their racial ability. These are very diverse and can range from simple damage dealing abilities to the ability to set up turrets, to stuns, to a hook that temporarily amplifies damage, and many more besides. So unlike most other roguelites where you'll mostly be either starting at the same point every time or choosing from a list of characters that have specific defined starting points, much of the variety in Flamebreak happens right at the start of the run. The combination of race, weapon, and abilities will define how you'll play that round. And the really nice thing about this core system is that having 3 options goes a long way to solving a common problem with the genre, which is that of a dud run. In a lot of other roguelites, if the early bits of the game fail to power you up reasonably well, it's not uncommon for people to just tank the run and restart. Here, if you see a combination of stuff that's shit, you can just choose one of the other 2. Of course, if you're playing hard mode, you no longer get that choice as it's by design fully random. But by that point, you'll have hopefully learned how to properly utilize all the game systems. Nothing is bad to the point of unusability, but some things do take some time to get a handle on. So once you pick your loadout and start your run, you'll get to the map. You'll start at the bottom and have to make your way to the boss at the top. You can always see one space in every direction, and every visible space is marked by a symbol denoting what that space is. Crossed swords is usually a combat encounter, though you'll occasionally get a minigame instead. Kill the enemies and you're rewarded with gold, and you can then move on. Crossed swords inside a red triangle are a combat encounter that'll have some sort of danger added to it, such as floor hazards or projectiles. You'll get a bonus of a random consumable on top of the standard gold for clearing this tile. The big goblin head is a mini-boss which will set you against a powerful enemy in exchange for triple the normal gold reward. You can also encounter a variety of shops that contain useful stat boosting items, consumables, cheap heals, ability upgrades, and armor sets, with each item having a small chance of being offered at a discount. So let's talk about armor sets because they're fucking cool. Each set is comprised of 3 items, though each shop will only carry 1 of them. Stat-wise, these items are less gold efficient than simply buying straight stat boosters, but get all items in a set and you'll get an extremely powerful additional ability. One allows you to simply ignore all obstacles in combat maps. One gives you a regenerating shield that deals damage when popped. That one's overpowered, by the way. One gives your attacks an extremely potent damage over time effect. Another will straight up give you a skill power multiplier, which definitely has the potential to be OP. These armor sets, in my view, add in the traditional roguelite experience of finding items to power yourself up without compromising the core game philosophy of giving the player choice within a randomized setting. After all, whenever you enter a shop that sells these item set pieces for the first time, you'll always be able to buy a piece of up to 3 different armor sets. While you can't choose which ones will spawn in each run, there's a good chance that something you like will be there. It's really neat, and even after the over 150 hours I've put into this game, I'm consistently excited whenever I get to play around with a completed armor set. The last of these tile spaces is the temples. Though your goal is to kill the gods, you can also gain their favor to provide you with bonuses throughout your run. Furere is my personal favorite, and he'll have lightning strike an enemy whenever you deal 500 damage. Proctus gives you damage resistance. Necrus summons one or more respawning skeletons to fight alongside you. Sepicles increases attack speed, movement speed, and cooldown reduction. And Halarin heals you at the end of each tile or gives you a stacking buff if your health is already full. The main way to gain favor is by going to a temple, which will put you in a combat encounter with a big altar to that god inside. As long as the altar stands, the enemies will gain a buff relevant to that god. Furere will cause lightning to strike the ground, creating a floor hazard. Proctus will make enemies take less damage. Necrus will cause all enemies to respawn once each after a few seconds. Sepicles will increase the move speed and animation speed of all enemies. And Halarin will passively heal enemies. Kill all enemies without breaking the altar and you'll gain 6 or 7 favor with that god. Destroy the altar and on top of the hazards ending, you'll lose 5 favor with that god and gain 2 with all the other gods. You gain a god's buff at 10 favor, which powers up at 20 and 30 favor. This is a fun system, though I do feel that Furere and Necrus stand significantly above the others in terms of usefulness. So a lot of this game ends up revolving around managing your money and your time. See, as you progress through the level, after a while, the darkness will slowly start to engulf the map, going from the bottom of the map to the top, encasing one layer each time you take a step. If you step on a tile engulfed by darkness, you'll be thrown into a combat encounter, even if that tile was originally a shop and even if you've already cleared that tile. It'll be a standard fight, but you'll gain no reward at the end. It's not anywhere close to a death sentence or a point of no return, but it does add an element of risk when you overstay your welcome and prevents you from leeching the map of all its money. So when I play, I find myself milking each map for as much as possible, hunting down priority shops and going out of my way to hit mini-bosses and bonus gold areas, which you can randomly find using consumables. It's not super important, so I'm not going to go into it. You will not, under any circumstances, have enough gold to buy everything you could ever want. Hell, even when it comes to ability upgrades, you're going to have to pick and choose, as you can only upgrade one per skill shop. So the core gameplay loop revolves around figuring out what armor sets the game has spawned, which ones you want to shoot for based on your build, while also juggling the cost of hunting down skill upgrades, and the time you'll have to spend seeking out temples for god boosts, assuming you don't get super lucky. It's a lot of fun and makes me constantly think on my toes, and in addition to the fact that I find the combat itself fun, I always find it satisfying from a mental perspective. I'm always thinking, planning, and readjusting when things go wrong. It's great. The last thing I want to discuss in this video is something I feel is both Flamebreak's greatest strength and its biggest weakness. When the developers were making this game, when they got to the balance everything step, they took it as more of a suggestion than an actual mandatory thing. On the one hand, this can make things really fun as things can get absolutely busted. If you're wondering if two things will interact in ways that seem possible but would be really stupid in a good way, they probably do. One of my favorite interactions is when the armor set that gives your attacks a damage over time effect and Furere's buff, which randomly attacks enemies as you deal damage. The Furere buff applies the dot, and the dot contributes to the damage threshold for the Furere buff. It's fucking glorious. Or consider the armor set that multiplies your skill power by 1.5. Say you get that, a few other skill power boosts, and the armor set that sets your attack damage and skill power to the greater value between the two. So suddenly you've got crazy ass attack damage on top of your multiplied skill power. And skill power itself is actually kind of overpowered because most of the factors of your abilities scale with skill power. Even abilities that say they scale with attack damage also scale with skill power because increasing your skill power will increase the amount of scaling that it does with attack damage. And of course, regular damage will scale with skill power as well. So if you can pump up skill power, you're probably set no matter what your build is. And don't get me started with percentages and multipliers. Anything with either of those has the chance of breaking things because of how much they scale with other effects and skill power. Like, I'm pretty sure percentage-based effects actually stack multiplicatively, which is ridiculous. I mean, I recently had a high skill power run on the Lich, whose racial ability allows you to reset an ability cooldown and also amplify its next cast. So I was dropping down turrets that were dealing over 1,000 damage per shot by the end of the run. It's so much fun seeing how you can contort the game to your will, and shit, there's even an achievement for dealing 50,000 damage in a single hit. Reminder that this game is one that's balanced around usually doing a few hundred per hit tops. But in addition to all the fun of breaking the game, there are times where certain game elements feel like they're designed to screw with you. If you're running a build with no ability to stun or interrupt enemies, which does happen if you're playing hard mode and can't pick a build, you're going to have a rough time with enemies that revive their allies or who power up by feasting on corpses. You just have to deal with them rather than being able to counter them. Halarin in general sucks because if your build doesn't have very high damage per second, it's very possible that his temples will out-heal you. And in the last zone of the game, every combat encounter gains the effect of the enemy god's temples. And the Halarin fight itself will have that passive healing plus the occasional random 3000 HP heals to every enemy on screen. If you don't have good DPS, it doesn't matter how skilled you are, you're fucked. And Proctus is also really rough if you don't have a specific counter for him, because you have to kill his 3 minions who periodically go invincible in order to make him vulnerable to any damage whatsoever. But all 3 respawn 10 seconds after the first dies, so that fight ends up getting long and protracted unless you got lucky and have strong AoE capabilities. Bad luck in a combat arena can block off a significant portion of the arena, severely restricting your mobility. So there are these moments of frustration where you don't always feel like you've been bested, but that the game fucked you over. Still, I'd say that the positives of how fucky this game can be do massively outweigh the negatives. But fuck Proctus and Halarin regardless. As the title of the video states, Flamebreak is a criminally underrated game, and it's a serious challenge to complete, which if you're familiar with my main channel, you know I like. The game is $10 at full price, and I'd say that's more than fair, but it does go on sale for 90% off, at which point you'd be a fool not to pick it up. Flamebreak has my full recommendation, and I absolutely love this game. I only have 1 achievement left to get that coveted 100% on Steam, and I'm still having a great time pushing for it. Play this game. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed, please do like and subscribe because it actually does help me as a creator. Check out the main channel if you haven't already for video essays and weeb shit, and feel free to follow me on Twitter at adstweets and join the Discord server linked below. Big thank you to my patrons, especially my God tier supporters, Bulk Squat Thrust, Drago, and Michael Rotolo. If you'd like to join them and get early access to content on both my channels, check out Patreon down below. Once again, thank you all for watching, and I'll see you next time. Play the Electro Swing.
Hit the road, Jack, and don't you come back no more, no more, no more, no more. Hit the road, Jack, and don't you come back.